Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Hi there, and welcome to Ethical Perspectives. This is a weekly segment that addresses local and national issues, and we do this by gathering regional experts to talk about the issues and think of creative solutions as well. I'm Quinn Pettifer with the Gazette, also the moderator for this session today. Today our topic is youth violence in the community, and specifically within this topic we're going to talk about a project that has been growing over the last few years here in the Cedar Rapids area, the SET Task Force, which is now a communities program within the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation. I will start the segment by disclosing that I am on the Grant Review Committee, which will make a lot more sense to the viewers here in just a short amount of time, but I'm very excited to talk about this here and to have this fantastic panel with me today. Hi guys, how's it going?
Good.
So far so good, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to do is first talk a little bit about what SET is, and we talked a little bit about this before the start of the show. SET has been referenced, especially I'd say in the last, we'll say, year and a half. It's come up in terms of an identified solution when it comes to working with youth and specifically within the realms of youth violence prevention. And while we've had reference and we've made reference in little bits and pieces, I know on Ethical Perspectives at least, we haven't had the chance to really devote a full 30 minutes to talking about the history, the why this was developed, and the milestones it's achieved so far, and where we are current with structure, especially Rachel within your position, and just what's ahead. So let's start by just introducing ourselves if you'd like. I got mine checked off, so I'm going to start with Rachel. If you want to just give us your name, organization, and a little bit about your relationship to SET.
Sure, my name is Rachel Rockwell, and I am the program officer at the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation for the Creating Safe, Equitable, and Thriving Communities Fund, also known as the SET Fund. And I started in that position in February of 2019, and we have given out some funds into the community to address the goals and priority of the SET Fund as was laid out through the SET Task Force report, which we'll talk a little bit more about, I'm sure, here tonight.
You are the product of one of those milestones, so we're glad you're here.
I'm a product.
All right, next up.
My name is Stacey Walker, and I serve as chair on the Linn County Board of Supervisors, and I had the honor and privilege of sort of being at the beginning of the work that led to the SET Task Force report, and I co-authored that report with Dr. Mary Wilczynski. And continue to work with the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation on the Cedar Rapids schools and the city of Cedar Rapids to execute on some of the goals laid out in the report.
Thanks, Stacey.
And Noreen Bush, Interim Superintendent of Cedar Rapids Community Schools. And the school district's been alongside this work, really, because if it's about youth and supporting our youth, we have the youth, we have the children in Cedar Rapids Community Schools. And so much of the SET focus is on proactive measures and preventative measures to support our kids in our community. And so that means education. And so that's the lens that the community school district brings.
And Noreen, you've been at this a couple of different angles, right? I mean, you were in one position when SET was first explored and discussed, and now as interim superintendent, you're taking another lens with this.
Sure, right. And so as deputy superintendent, even prior to that, I was associate superintendent, working a lot with our secondary schools. And so when there are events that happened within our community with our youth, usually that news, even though it may have been a community event, it comes to the schools very quickly. So supporting our kids and our administrators and our teachers and our educators means there's a lot of collaboration amongst our entire community, whether that be through mental health support, social emotional support, Cedar Rapids Police Department, entire comprehensive support and in helping our kids. So that was really a lot of my prior work. And now it's maybe focused in a little different lens of looking out into the community and in direct collaboration with folks like Stacey and Rachel.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the initial convening, identifying a need to get a group together, discussing specifically within the issues of youth violence, which has brought us to where we are today. So I'm looking at you, Stacey, to be able to give us some of that history.
Sure. Well, I think the work of the SET task force originated in 2015. By that fall, there were about 70 shots fired in the city of Cedar Rapids, and this community, understandably so, was growing more concerned about gun violence. It all came to a head when a 15-year-old young person was shot and killed by a 14-year-old person in this community. And there were some eager city council members to form a working group to study these issues and come up with recommendations. And I was asked to lead these conversations. And from there, we pulled together experts from different sectors and fields. We had educators, we had social service providers, law enforcement professionals, and other community leaders, including the faith community, that we brought together for a series of conversations. And what quickly became evident as we dug into the research that was available and talked to individuals in the community who had experienced violence was that we couldn't operate in a vacuum, and that this work was multifaceted, and any meaningful solution was going to need to be comprehensive. From there, this committee, if you will, formed 6 different subcommittees to study everything from economic opportunity to housing, to law enforcement, public safety, and community relations, and community engagement, and programming in the community. And as we worked, it became apparent that we certainly weren't going to solve these problems overnight, and we needed sort of a longer form process to address these issues. And through some work, some toil and snare, the SET task force was formed. It was chartered by resolutions with the City of Cedar Rapids, the Cedar Rapids Community School District, and the Linn County Board of Supervisors, sort of institutionalizing this work. And we worked and worked and worked, and by February of 2017, the SET task force report was published, and in the ensuing years, the collaboration with the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation was formed, and they have really from there taken on the privilege, if you will, of executing on this work and carrying it out.
Excellent summary. I think that a lot of people have been pleasantly surprised to see that this was not a, yeah, we should do this, let's get some people together, let's talk about it, let's set a plan, and we'll shelve it and just let it sit there. That this actually progressed and this actually took shape and has a home, which is why I'm now looking at Rachel, because you are the person that is responsible for this program within the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation as program officer. So talk a little bit about just this next step as far as, I guess we're now into October, November 2018-ish. So take us there.
Well, as Stacey said, I think everybody at the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation would agree that it is a privilege to be the home for this work, and everyone there is committed to the goals and priorities of the SET now committees and community that wants to see things change. So right away after I worked, there was, I think the first day I started, we went to work on pulling together.
There was no honeymoon period for you. I mean, I remember. It was just like, hi, welcome. All right, let's go.
They're like, okay,
but you can handle it.
We're going to have a grant round, and we want to get this out in the next week so that people, since this is something new, it's new for the foundation, it's new for the community, we want to give people the time to kind of wrap their minds around what we're looking at. And what we were looking for is some innovation, right? We were looking for collaboration. We were looking for grassroots movement around creating a safe, equitable, and thriving community. And so we had to look at how can we be a catalyst for some of that. In the grant world and in the nonprofit world, it's hard to keep things going and to sustain yourselves through grant funds, and so it becomes something that's a little bit competitive, right? So we were really looking to for those organizations and those individuals who are willing to put that competitiveness aside and think about our youth and think about what we could do if we work together and the change that we would be able to see. And so through our summer grant round was $40,000 that was available. We funded 8 different programs. Some of these programs had never been done in this community before. Some of them were with existing social service organizations that had been doing work in the community, but now they were working with a new demographic that they hadn't worked with before, or they were tweaking their programming to serve the special needs of those that we were trying to serve. So it was really exciting to see that creativity, looking for those creative solutions, like you said. And we really looked at the summer as a learning opportunity to learn what it takes to engage the youth. What are the youth hungry for? What are they going to show up for? And then also what obstacles are there for them to being engaged in productive, supportive programming during the summer. Absolutely. And so we're really excited about the results of our summer.
As I say, we're going to get to those results and a little bit more about the actual experience of gathering, which I got to be a part of for a couple of those first conversations. And amazing enough, the last episode that I moderated or hosted for Ethical Perspectives was about the power of nonprofit collaboration. Yes. And I couldn't help but think during that segment, gosh, SET and that first round, especially of summer grants, that was a great example of that. So I'm going to put you on pause for a second. And Noreen, I want to talk to you a little bit. You hit on this when we were doing introductions, but just the role of the Cedar Rapids Community School District from the start. You guys have been that consistent presence just because of the unique relationship and access to the educators, to the students, to the parents and family and guardians. And so can you talk a little bit about just your thoughts of that milestone of going from task force to programming within the foundation and just a school's perspective?
I think Rachel hit on some really key points in regards to the summer programming opportunity. When I think about what it means for safe, equitable, and thriving, I also think about safe, supportive, and collaborative. And so what we know, some of the fundamentals in school pedagogy, we come back to an old hierarchy called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the fundamental foundation of that hierarchy is that humans, in this case our children, have their basic human needs met. So do they have food? Do they have shelter? Do they have water? Do they have, are they able to sleep? And then the next level is that they feel safe. When you have those two foundational things, then you can get into healthy relationships, right? But healthy relationships are a product of not just those things being a part of their lives, the basic fundamental human needs, but also connectedness. And that's what I think Rachel was highlighting so well, is the collaborative opportunity for our community is also the opportunity to connect with kids who might need a connection that doesn't currently exist in their environment. So from a school point of view, I think we're getting better at understanding of what it means to create a safe, supportive, collaborative environment for kids, which means we have to demonstrate that as adults. So we can't be competing with each other all the time, but rather what does it mean to really get at the heart of a child, understand who they are, understand what they need. And when kids aren't connected to adults in a positive way, they're going to seek connection in other ways. And so that might be through connecting through someone who's building their self-efficacy, making them feel proud about belonging in another arena that may not be a positive influence in their life. So providing these options, we call that replacement, a replacement opportunity, but access for kids. So that's our philosophy with Cedar Rapids Community School District, but we have work to do. We don't have all access points in our schools. And so this opportunity to collaborate across a common vocabulary, common understanding of how we're supporting the youth in our community, the power of we is like, I've never felt it quite to this exponential level before. And I'm a Cedar Rapids product. I graduated from Cedar Rapids Community School District, and I feel really differently about this moment in this time for our kids in our community from a prevention point of view, but also our kids deserve it. And then we have to step up and see how are we going to collaborate across the opportunities. So just on the note of $40,000, what a great entry point. But to me, this is just a seed plant to what might be greater down the road with the school district and with the community and our community partnerships.
So with all the partners in place, we get to the first gathering, the first gathering of those that are, and again, being there, you had individuals that were passionate, and this was, as talking about and encouraging applications for the summer grant cycle. You had individuals that were passionate. You had organizations that were ready to think different. You had new ideas from each of your angles. And Stacey, I'll start with you. Just going to that first meeting, that first gathering, to talk about where SET is and the summer grant cycle opportunities. What was your take? What was the excitement or the vibe for you?
Well, and I'll even start a little earlier.
Please.
I'd say the magic of the SET Task Force project as a whole has been bringing so many different stakeholders together around a common issue. And even in those early meetings, although some of them were fraught with tension and people brought different perspectives, but it was a healthy tension, I think. We had organizations saying, I never knew that your organization provided that service, and that might be the missing puzzle piece in this service map that we were building, right? We had law enforcement agencies finding new collaborations with social service providers that have blossomed into wonderful services for our community. Those are some of the earlier conversations of the mobile crisis unit, which, as we know, this community is benefiting from, right? So if you fast forward to that moment when Rachel was brought on board and got out into the community to bring in all of these potential grant applicants and other champions for youth in our community, it was similar magic. It was organizations learning about the programming of other organizations and making real and meaningful connections that even if grant monies weren't awarded, new partnerships were created. And again, one of the biggest takeaways for me personally is that there is power in bringing people together around a common cause. Good things tend to happen.
Rachel, your turn.
That's really been my most enjoyable part of the work that I've been doing is that energy that Noreen was talking about, and the hope that comes out of that, where people are really willing to show up and kind of set their own personal wants and desires to the side and have conversations about what the potential for our community is, what the potential for our youth are, and how they can be a part, like what their role might be in working together cross sectors, whether it's a coach in the community who's worked with youth all along or kind of mentored youth, to law enforcement and social services and government agencies, coming together and having these conversations about where those gaps are in the services and where they see our youth and families falling through those cracks, and how can we seal them up. And then not even having the information about the other organizations that existed, and saying, starting to think about what could we do? And dreaming, really. And then once you sort of have that vision, then you start to take action towards that. And so from that first session to the last one where we had I think 47 participants, and people afterwards were coming up and saying, thank you for doing that. I had no idea about the potential, and we're going to work with this organization. Even if we don't get funding, we're going to do this, this, and that, and we're so excited about that.
When on earth would you ever expect to hear, even if we don't get funding, it's still a win, right?
Unexpected, and
Right.
really glad about it. Yeah,
Exactly. So some of those organizations did receive funding, right? 8 projects, and 8 projects were identified to take us through summer. And in short, in terms of the kinds of projects, I mean, I know innovation and collaboration was really the focus for this summer grant cycle. What were some of the wins? What were some of those highlights?
Right. So over 250 youth participated in funded programming over the summer. A lot of those programs went throughout the whole summer, so they were weekly for 8 or 10 weeks. And at least, I think, 75 students went to ongoing programming throughout the summer. Some of those programs were one of the highlights, and I think some of the community members are familiar now with the Humanize My Hoodie movement. And they worked with Metro students and did a workshop on entrepreneurship and branding themselves, and they did a screen printing workshop also, and they did a art exhibit at the African American Museum of Iowa where the students were featured in the artwork. And also the guys from Humanize My Hoodie, Jason and Andre, they did a training for the teachers over at Metro on kind of restorative practices and ally workshop and implicit bias. And so now all of the students at Metro High School can be impacted by that work, so it's pretty exciting. Another program that was funded was the Eastern Iowa African Diaspora, and they planned on having different guest speakers and events and connecting with older youth with professionals in the community. And they kind of expected that they would have 5 or 10, maybe 15 at the most participants per session. And I think at some of the sessions they had over 50 participants. And that was just one example of a program where the students asked that they have the programming all throughout the year, right? Wow. They found out that, if you have food and field trips and caring adults, the kids will show up, right?
Got the right ingredients.
Yes.
Yes. So a lot of, and you have a great comprehensive summary of some of those takeaways. And that's one, like you said, one of many examples of some wins over the summer. Moving into the fall cycle, approach in terms of the community sessions has evolved a little bit, just because of kind of taking it to the next level. One, there's more funds, right? Which is never bad, $120,000, I believe.
That's right.
And so take us through, there's 3 different sessions, and I know we've all kind of been involved in those in some way, so I don't want to put all the pressure on Rachel as far as that experience, but take us through that.
So we started out with bringing in the current situation in the community. So if we're asking folks to address the issues in the community, they need to understand what the issues are. And so we had Amy Hockett from Linn County, she's an epidemiologist, come in and talk about all the stats around violence, around youth, and around homelessness and poverty in Linn County. And so that kind of really painted a picture, right, of what was going on. We had Chief German come in and share about what the Cedar Rapids Police Department are seeing and what they're doing and the approaches that they're taking, and kind of giving that information too. And then we also had someone come from Willis-Dady who'd done a report on homelessness, the cost of homelessness. And so we got a lot of data that evening, and we also got some understanding of the cost to the community if we're not addressing these issues.
Right, the impact. So that was one. So second session.
The second session was about research-based community violence intervention. So also kind of realized that we're asking community members to step up and do something but we don't really know exactly what the answers are. So we wanted to support them with what research is showing is working in other communities or communities that are similar to Cedar Rapids. And so we laid out information from the CDC and USAID and their reports on what's working in communities. And then the final one was really about pulling that all together and learning from the summer funded programs and giving everyone present the opportunity to get to know other organizations, what their goals are, how they think we could address the priorities of the set.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Noreen and Stacey, from your perspective of this second round, what's your take on just how these have become a little bit more, I'd say, educational? Certainly still sharing of information, but that educational element.
So I think that anything that's the first time round, so this summer there's learned experience. So it sets, I've tried to transition my vocabulary from piloting things to phasing, because to me it's like a pilot, you give permission to give something up. The vision of this was to phase something in over time. So initial phase, and now it's the scale up. So I think what the beauty was, and although I didn't facilitate or participate in those, the partners who are interested in applying through this process gained a better scope and understanding of the purpose of the work, again starting with the vision. So then that's gained some momentum, and so people who didn't apply before are now putting their agency's name in the hat, or even an individual's name in the hat, in regards to, I think not only do I believe in this work, but this is an opportunity I could provide to youth. So it comes back to purpose and vision, and that carries some momentum. So I think there's been an increase in applicants this round. That's also, I think, knowledge gain. With knowledge comes great understanding, right? And power, understanding of what the purpose is, and that the community can have more input and feel more ownership.
Absolutely.
To be a part of it.
Stacey, from your perspective of next.
Yeah, well, I agree with much of what has been said. We had an initial grant round where we could test the system, if you will. We are very well aware that the majority of the funds for this project are, these are public funds. And so we have a responsibility to the community to make sure we are developing a process that is going to be sustainable and that is ready for high impact as we move into the future, right? So we're looking at value, and we're also now starting to look at, we've done some work understanding the problems, and we now need to figure out what is creating the problem. So how do we operate at the systemic level? And I can tell you from being on the policy board of this project, we are having discussions about how we do just that. So how, moving forward, as the number of grant dollars have increased, and we have time and experience on our side, how can we make the most efficient and valuable investments in this work that can get at sort of the root causes of the original problem, of course, which was gun violence amongst our youth, and the other attendant issues like poverty and the opportunity gaps and other things that our young people are facing in the community.
We have about 20 seconds wrapping up here. Is this work ever over?
Short answer is no.
Short answer is no. I like it.
Yes.
I think that we've made some great strides, though, and I want to thank each one of you, because each one of you have been pivotal, critical in pivoting our discussions about youth violence and youth violence prevention. So thank you for all the work that you've done to set, and I'm very excited to see about what's next. So, and thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in to this edition of Ethical Perspectives. I'm Quinn Pettifer with the Gazette, and we will see you next time.